This is Sickle Cell and the Mind, a mental wellness podcast, brought to you by the European Sickle Cell Federation. It's time to reduce social isolation and create new pathways to mental wellness together. You're listening to Sickle Cell and the Mind, a mental wellness podcast, with your host, Imaarl Duprey.
I'm Imaarl, the host, and we've got two lovely guests. Should we get straight into introducing ourselves? So, should we start with Manny?
Yes, hi everybody. So my name is Manny. I am of Ghanaian heritage and I live in London. I'm a sickle cell advocate, amongst many other things, but sickle cell advocate is where my focus is at, and that's where I put my main energy into. I guess ultimately, for me, it's about kind of changing the narrative of how sickle cell or how people living with sickle cell are dealt with, um, in terms of the care that they receive at hospitals and just generally our treatment. It's an uphill struggle that's been going on for a long while, and yeah, as I say, just trying to change the narrative and give a better outlook for people living with sickle cell, really.
Great. And Miriam?
Hello, I'm Miriam. I'm also a patient with sickle cell. I was born in Angola, but I am from Portugal. I'm Portuguese, so never mind. And British as well. And I'm currently living in the UK, in Cambridge. I'm a language consultant. That's my regular job, daytime job. And I've been a patient representative for quite a few years for sickle cell. For Portugal, where I'm part of APPDH, which is a national society for hemoglobinopathies, and representing Portugal. And since I relocated to the UK 10 years ago, kind of making the bridge between the European reality, UK reality, Portugal, integrating a little bit of everything, and making the most of it and drawing knowledge and sharing information just as much as many. So, yeah.
Great. And I'm a mental health advocate, so I sort of represent families that are struggling with their mental health and struggling to access mental health support, appropriate mental health support, and equal mental health support. So that's sort of my background. So let's start with these questions. The first section is about opening up. So we'll start with you, Manny. How do you approach discussing sickle cell condition with a romantic partner, especially in the early stages of relationships?
Head on, to be honest. Just take the bull by the horn, so to speak. It's an awkward conversation for sure, but I feel like it's a necessary one. So I just, it's one of those that I throw in there very early on. So, what's your favorite color? What type of food do you like to eat? Do you have sickle cell trait? Um, you know what I mean? You just got to throw it in there. It's very important to, I think, set the precedent and the understanding from early, as opposed to allowing emotions to, take precedent. I feel that it's something that we need to be making informed decisions on. So for me, right out the gate, got to put that on the table, make sure everybody knows where they stand, and that way people are able to make informed decisions and proceed accordingly.
Well, for me, it has been quite a while. So I've been married for 32 years now. So it's been a while since I've been down that road. But I always had the same attitude, very open. I never hid it. And it was part of the and my husband, even with previous boyfriends, it was always a part of like what you do and what you like and things like that. And growing up with sickle cell is not easy peasy. And the social interaction, even outside of the relationships, it always is tricky. And so you need to share at least with your closest friends that you have it. You never know when a crisis is along the way, when you cancel your plans or anything. So the relationship comes in the same buckets, and as soon as you clear that, the easier it gets.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to talk about a bit about physical intimacy. So Manny, can you share how living with sickle cell has affected your physical intimacy with romantic partners?
You just you just kind of have to be wary in the same manner that you are with everything that you do on a day to day. So, um, you know, the in and out of the house, the shower, the clothes you wear, so on and so forth. All of that, you're constantly um making sure that you're doing the right thing, constantly making sure that you're in tune with your body, and it's exactly the same in that regard as well. You know, you have to it, it ultimately sets the tone for however your day is gonna go, you know, right from the morning. So it might be that you might not be able to participate in certain things, be it work or, you know, other, um, because of how you feel internally, because of how your sickle cell is making you feel, and it's exactly the same in that regard. So, for example, it might be a case of, um, you know, the mood has been set or the tone has been set or what have you, but you, as much as you might want to participate, or even your body is showing that you know you, or letting you know that you want to participate, you got to use wisdom and understand that it might not be the best thing for you. So sometimes that means you have to you know, dial it down or hold back. So yeah, it's just about exercise and wisdom in the same way you would any other situation.
Have you faced any misunderstandings or misconceptions about your conditions from partners or romantic relationships?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's one of those things that you have to tread carefully, generally speaking, because if you, I think good communication is very important, because if there's not good communication, it can be translated as um, something personal to that person. And you know, the way to make sure it's not that, and that isn't the case, is to be vocal about how you're feeling, especially on the good days as well, so that when the bad days do happen, however few and far between or otherwise, so that when they do happen, there's a clear understanding of what exactly is happening. Because, for example, it may be that you know, uh, let's say, for example, because of pain, it might be that you're not in the mood. If you don't fully communicate that, you might say you're not in the mood. Excuse me. That can be translated as you're just not in the mood. Whereas there's an underlying issue, um, and you know how you share that is important, because you've got somebody else's feelings to consider as well. And for as much as it might be that you may not be the instigator as well. So if you're not instigating, you know, whatever the interaction is, you have to tread carefully with that person's emotions, because essentially over time that can look like rejection, or it can look like, you know, it can look, you know, it can look like something that it isn't. So it's just very important, I feel, to communicate that correctly. But yeah, misunderstandings 100%, because it might be that, you know, something in your hips or something in your back, but whatever it is, it means that you won't be able to perform, you won't be up to the task, or you may not necessarily be as actively participating as you might ordinarily be. And all of these things are, you know, going to obviously affect your interaction. But if you don't communicate that, then your partner's not going to know. So yeah, it's definitely important to just have good communication around it. Otherwise, yeah, misunderstandings, they're gonna occur 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Communication is key. And Miriam, I know you've been married for some time now, but have you experienced miscommunication or misunderstandings in your relationship?
Probably as a teenager. With my husband, I have been very lucky. And on the plus side, he was a medical student as well, so there was a learning curve that usually other people need on what is sickle cell and knowing a bit more about the disease, which helps a lot. That he, as a medical student and as part of a family with doctors who got interested in the thing, like the new kid in the block who's a bit weird. Let's find out what it really means. But it did help a lot. So going backwards from that, with in other previous relationships, it was more teenage years, the beginning of uni. I would say that probably, but I was always very the same way. I was very open. I didn't lose any time with that. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not worth the time. But it wasn't just about the romance and the relationships in terms of romantic relationships with friends. I was a bit like that as well. One thing is acquaintances, the other thing is friends. And friends, it gets really deep and it gets really about understanding what it means and accepting that there are good days, there are bad days, and I have limitations. And if I have to cancel, I have to cancel, and there's a reason for it. If I'm not up to it, there's a reason for it. I'm known for kind of some bad temper, which comes with not having the patience to deal with small things which are not relevant, but also because sometimes the energy it takes to manage your life on a day-to-day basis doesn't leave a lot of room for secondary stuff, and you are sound a little bit more aggressive or things like that. So it comes with a package. So if you're a friend, you're a friend. And I take it that the romantic relationship also, it needs good communication and it needs a solid friendship as well. But yeah, I'm spoiled in that sense.
Yeah, you seem to hit the jackpot there with a medical student as a husband. Manny, how do you manage expectations in your relationships, especially if you're like tired from a crisis? And yeah, how do you manage them expectations with partners?
Wow. I think I think again it's just communication. Because there's sometimes it requires you to be a bit selfish as well, and selfless, because whilst all of those things are factors, it might be that, you know what, I might not be 100%, but for her, I will, perhaps not give in. Giving is not really the terminology I would use, but you'll have that consideration. And then similarly, it might be that you're feeling a bit selfish, so it might not perhaps be in the best of interests, but um you you want to get yours as well, you know what I mean? So it's yeah, I think it requires a bit of give and take, and a bit of meat in the middle as well. It's really heavy compromise, because it may be sometimes where, like I said, you're not up to it, they're not up to it, but you know, because of circumstance, or because of maybe there might be a reduction in frequency, so you just have to, navigate that differently. So um yeah, you'll take that into consideration, and perhaps it might be a case where, usually on this occasion you might not, but taking into consideration the mitigating circumstances, you might think to yourself, okay, perhaps it might be better for, the bigger picture and the relationship, that on this occasion you might concede to whatever the request may be, or what have you. But um that's gonna come from knowing your partner and spending time with them, and vice versa, because they're gonna learn and understand, when is necessary sometimes to leave you be, and again, when it might be safe for you to engage. And when I say safe, I mean that in just in regard to, you know, being physically feeling okay, physically feeling
And I guess
okay.
that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning when you're first meeting somebody, you lay everything on the table and explain how your symptoms might affect the relationship. You know, because symptoms might disrupt plans, and how you communicate that is very important.
Sorry, yes and no. And I say yes and no because for as much as you communicate it, there's gonna be some of it that can only be demonstrated through action, through, you know, the actuality of having that crisis or having the pain episodes or what have you, so or the aftermath of that and whatever that looks like. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
Yeah. And what about you, Miriam? How have you managed expectations in your relationship?
I think that's one of the most difficult aspects. And you need to learn, for example, one thing is the good communication. It goes both ways. So it's not just us to the partner, but them with us as well. And they need to be really comfortable in speaking and saying if there's something which is bothering them, if they don't understand, or if we are doing something. I remember that there was a time when I was overcomplicating something, and my husband said, "Look, you always go into this spiral about complicating, and then it affects and something. You need to think of it differently." And so it's the thing with the communication. Then another thing would be, for example, um, learning not to hold on to specific dates or moments or occasions. For example, you are very keen on going on a weekend or a specific celebration or whatever. Something happens and all of a sudden everything is upside down. It doesn't work. So you need to develop, like, day to day is very important. And when you feel okay, if there isn't a specific date or a specific motive for celebration, make one. Make that a good time to enjoy and do something special and work on the little things. The little things are very important because that's what builds the foundation and helps you manage the trickier situations. Um, yeah.
And I guess it takes a great deal of vulnerability. So, Manny, what challenges do you face in being vulnerable with somebody that you care about, related to how your success impacts you?
Um, it's tricky because you're as a man you want to be a leader. You know, in every sense of the word, you want to be strong. You want to lead from the front. Sometimes because of how crippling and debilitating sickle cell can be, you're physically not able to do that. Um, and it means being looked after. And I feel that, um, you know, a lot of the conversations that I've had with people who live with sickle cell, it's for for somebody who is a for somebody who for somebody who may find it or sorry, for somebody who is a nurturer to be with somebody with you know, sickle cell, they might find it easier because, you know, they're in a position of care and they may find it easier to be a help to this person. But for somebody who maybe is not that way inclined, um, to be on the receiving end of that might be a bit more difficult. And just to touch as well on, you know, something that um, was said earlier. Um, I feel that getting to know somebody whilst you're dating and having sickle cell is really important. I've realized over time that um, your partner can be your peace. They should be your peace, first and foremost. But having been in more than one long-term relationship, I've literally been able to look at one relationship and the other and identify the difference being the person and how they deal with me, in that my the regularity of my visits to hospital dramatically decreased, versus being with somebody else, because how they dealt with and understood my sickle cell meant that I was at a heightened state of stress, and it meant that you know, there were more frequent visits to the hospital, and there were more spikes in, crisis and so on and so forth. So that's really important. Yeah.
And talking a bit about anxiety, Miriam, we'll go to you. How do you handle any fear or anxieties related to your health?
That is the most difficult aspect. And as I grow older, the worse it gets. I think, oh my God. I think it has to do with your nature as well. I am all about quality control, and I am very picky with stuff and everything. And from early days, the most difficult thing is managing expectations. I would say that I have the bar set really high. I never wanted sickle cell to limit me in whatever. So when I'm not feeling okay and when I'm ill is one thing. When I'm not, the bar has always been that you can do whatever others do, the same, better, it doesn't matter. You are the one who sets the limits, not the others who sets the limits to you. But it's difficult to live by that. So anxiety of not knowing, because a crisis can occur at any time, day or night, usually more night than day, unfortunately, usually more weekends rather than weekdays. So always, I remember I was talking about celebrations and special occasions and going out. I would generally fall ill when I had a school trip, for example, or when I was about to go on vacation, because the buildup of the expectation was so high that that would be a thing. So it's anxiety about finally managing to achieve something or going to do something that you want really badly, but also about not knowing if you're going to be okay by the end of the day, if you're going to be okay the next day.
And what about you, Manny? How do you manage these anxieties or the fear that you might become unwell?
I think a lot of it is self-reliance. There are, again, having navigated this for however many years, I've come across a lot of people who deal with sickle cell in various ways. One thing that I've found consistently is um, women with sickle cell tend to have a better support network. It's just a fact. And I feel like that being the case, it and going through the experiences I've just over the years become a lot more self-reliant on, if I am having a crisis, then I deal with it, and I get me to where I need to be. And what that means in terms of from an anxiety perspective is it's reduced. um the anxiety, it's still there in the sense of, because you always have these thoughts of or these thoughts about being present for your partner within the context of a relationship, whatever that looks like. You have to factor in children, grandchildren, and so on and so forth. Preparing the home, making the home, whether it's picking children up, shopping, all these things you have to factor in. And, I think rather than anxiety, it's more a case of, I think, guilt. And, this is why when we all go through the emergency process of going to hospital, we tend to go through a checklist of all these things to make sure that there's damage limitation, to make sure that there's something in place so that the strain is not as much on our partner as possible.
We spoke earlier about the importance of supportive partners. Miriam, I wanted to ask you, what do you think an ideal supportive partner looks like to you? And how can partners of people with sickle cell better support them emotionally?
Okay, so first of all, I think it has to be a good friend. and a good communicator, because that is very, very important to overcome the parts where maybe the romance is not there, but you're still a good and supportive friend. I think that your partner, I had, so besides the sickle cell, and maybe as a consequence of sickle cell, I had a hip replacement 2 years ago. I think it was even, I felt even more vulnerable than with the sickle cell crisis, if it's that possible, because you need to depend and rely on your partner for absolutely everything during the at least the initial 6 weeks of recovery, which is really complex, for absolutely everything. So it's like you're stripped of not your dignity, because it's not about that, but they see you in the most suffering, not just from the pain, not just from the medication, but you really depend on the partner. It's like you're a child again, and it used to be your parents taking care of you and helping you to go to the toilet and helping you shower, helping you clip your nails, helping you do absolutely everything. You rely on your partner for that. I think that you need to have a good and solid relationship for the partner to endure all of it. Sometimes I don't think it's easy. I am very grumpy when I'm not okay. So it's not easy, but you also learn a lot from that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Manny, how do you think a partner can support somebody emotionally with sickle cell?
I think being present is so necessary and so massively underrated. Um, I don't necessarily need somebody to be a nurse. And this is just generally speaking throughout, whatever the relationship may be. I don't necessarily need somebody to be a nurse, but I do need my friend to be my friend. Um, so that looks like talking to me. Don't stop talking to me because I'm unwell, and don't change how you talk to me because because I'm unwell, because I'm still a human being. I'm still the same person. It's just that in the context of this sickness, I may experience higher levels of pain, but you know, things like conversation will take my mind away from that pain. So I think just having an understanding of what that individual's needs are, at the time. A lot of people will. I always say to people, don't Google sickle cell, because if you do, it's a horrible read. It's genuinely one of the worst reads you can find, and it's not textbook like that. There's nothing textbook about sickle cell. Don't get me wrong, there's the science, but everybody presents differently. And so it's important that whoever you're interacting with, you understand that as much as the science does exist, the person exists as well. And so you have to embrace and acknowledge the person, and treat them as the individual that they are, when that time comes.
And Miriam, as someone who's been married for some time now, what advice would you give to others who are looking to explore romantic relationships and maintain intimacy?
Never take it for granted. It's one day at a time, 1 week at a time. Um, and you've got to put in yourself and make an effort as well. Maybe you can't do it always, because there are times when it's not your focus and you need the energy for other things, but you really got to work on it as well. And if something if you don't think that something is okay, don't hide it, don't put it under the rug. Talk about it openly and work on it. And it works both ways, because I've been schooled by my husband on a couple of occasions, things which were not going okay, which we could work on to make it better. Life is not easy. I took an early in the relationship, even before marriage, for example, one thing that wanted to, well, once it started getting a little bit more serious, I wanted to talk about having children, because it was something which was important for me, not because I don't like children, because I love them, but I think this is a heavy toll. And I decided from early stages that I didn't want to have children. But it's two, right? It's a decision that has to be taken as a couple, has to be made as a couple. So we discussed about that. We discussed about. So we went to a genetic counseling appointment. We talked to my doctor. We covered all the bases first before making a decision, talking about how do you pass on sickle cell? It takes two carriers, or it takes one sickle cell patient like myself, and then a number of different things. And you really need to be open and talk about that. And that's the thing. It's having a sound communication, a good communication. That's the basis. There will be bad days. There will be good days. Fortunately, more good days than bad days. Excellent communication. And then I think you got to be a little bit lucky as well. People change along the way. So, of course, my husband has changed as well. Maybe for some things he changed for the better, some things not so good. But it's that he's seen me in all different aspects, and he's still, sometimes it's just a message, just a text, just a phone call, but that is important. So it's not just about the nursing part, as Manny was saying, but the companionship, that's really important as well.
Um, I think for this question, I'm taking mental notes of everything that Miriam said. A wealth of experience there. So thank you for sharing that. Um, I just feel it's important to be open. I think at the beginning of a relationship, setting, like Miriam said before, setting expectations is important. Um, Telling somebody that you're about to go on a roller coaster, are you prepared? Um, and they could say yes, they could say no. And you have to be realistic about what that looks like. I've had it where my partner has come to the hospital and she's been like, "Oh, that wasn't too bad," and I'll be like, "That was a walk in the park." That was, in terms of difficulty, that was probably the easiest admission I've ever had. So it does get worse. Um, and explaining what that means, and getting an understanding of what that can look like, and just preparing for that. Yeah.
Thank you both for being so open. It was really interesting to hear from both ends of the spectrum, I guess, with Miriam being in a long-term relationship and yourself, Manny. So thank you for being so open and vulnerable today, and I wish you all the best for the future.
No, thank you for your questions, and yeah, like I said, Miriam, thank you very much for the wealth of experience. Definitely taken some notes from that.
As I was saying, it's one day at a time. So I always learn from my friends as well, from other situations, and you need to take it as it comes, as with life. But thank you for the opportunity for the podcast, and thank you for being here as well, Manny.
If you have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this episode, please reach out to the European Sickle Cell Federation so we can signpost you to the relevant support services in your country. Our email address is office@escfederation.eu.